growing up in the ashram. We were, I read that subsequently, mostly Sri Aurobindo's writings on, from the Vedas to the Gita, but none of those concepts were, those terminology was something I was exposed to growing up in the ashram. So only terms I was familiar with, and I still, the only ones I keep in mind is what the mother uses in her prayers and meditation, and subsequently the Supreme or the Lord. I don't think she ever used the word God in any of her prayers or meditation or in any of her writings, So that's what I think of, and I view her as, I think Sri Aurobindo says in his book, The Mother, she's the divine Shakti. The other word is the divine, So I just see her as the divine Shakti, and the source of all inspiration, what seeking I have is to her and through her.
Nice. Thank you for that, Lakshman. We're going to continue. Vladimir warned me about an hour ago that we want to continue on this dialogue tonight, because we kind of got off into an exercise which I think was very useful, but just want to kind of loop back into that first paragraph. But I'll let you open, Vladimir, with mantra. Wow, it's pouring here. I guess that's auspicious.
All right. Okay.
So my
we could use some of that here.
Watering of plants was useless anyway. All right. Om Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatam aham vande paramananda madhavam.
Okay, so we got about 2 slides in, 3 slides in of about 5 or 6, and my partner Ruthie isn't here tonight. How dare she? But anyways, we're going to continue. We're going to make it through that first paragraph. Last time, for I think just about everybody, Nishat may not have been here, but we started with just Ruthie and I looking at a definition of Purushottama, and both kind of having different sources. One essays on the Gita, and one she went to something called Yogapedia. But interestingly enough, it was a very good and accurate definition, which isn't always the case on the internet, and that's what she wanted to kind of see and test. And then we started through the first paragraph, which the first sentence starts with this then is the yoga. So that kind of caused us, if you recall, to go back to the last paragraph of chapter 13 and discuss that a bit, and then move into the first paragraph of chapter 14. And we just had a whole lot of interesting dialogue and sharing. Ruthie brought forth a really interesting and engaging exercise where we took karma yoga and was asking everyone if they could kind of share in their own life, because what we're trying to do here is also keep this real in terms of daily application of some of these messages from the Gita and Sri Krishna and Sri Aurobindo. And so we had some discussion about that. And so tonight we're just going to go back and try to finish that first paragraph and have some additional dialogue. So please feel free at any point in time to jump in, comments, questions, etc. But let me screen share, and we'll get beautiful Krishna back up here, which I'm sure, Bill, you appreciate the beauty of Sri Krishna here. So Where we left was we hadn't gotten to this section, two sentences, so we'll just kind of read it together. And then personally, I just wanted to share some thoughts and ideas and feelings that came to mind as I read this, and would love again for anyone else to also pitch in. But let's just start by reading it. In the self, then in me, is the formula he gives, implying that the transcendence of the individual personality, by seeing it as a becoming in the impersonal, self-existent being, is simply a means of arriving at the great secret in personal personality, which is thus silent, calm, and uplifted above nature in the impersonal being, but also present and active in nature in all these million becomings. Losing our lower individual personality in the impersonal, we arrive finally at union with the Supreme Personality, which is not separate and individual, but yet assumes all individualities, transcending the lower nature of the three gunas and seating the soul in the immobile Purusha beyond the three gunas. We can ascend finally into the higher nature of the infinite Godhead, which is not bound by the three gunas, even when it acts through nature. So here, what we are being told is that the first step, right, is to transcend the lower nature of the three gunas of Prakriti, right, the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, and doing that by seating the soul, the individual soul within nature, in the immobile Purusha that is actually above these three gunas. And this immobile Purusha I take as the unborn one, as the Purusha in the Sankhya philosophy, the silent witness that we spoke about last time. And it is through this, by seating the soul in the immobile Purusha, that we can then not stop there, but we continue to ascend into the higher nature of the infinite Godhead, or the infinite Supreme, which is not bound by these three gunas. And I think we mentioned last time also this infinite Godhead, Purushottama, the Shakti associated, or his Shakti, is Para Prakriti, or the divine Shakti, the supreme, the mother, if you will. And so we come back to that first sentence, in the self, capital S, so in the unborn self that is beyond time and space, that is not a part of this lower nature or Prakriti, then in me is the formula that is given here. And so it's, as I see this, it's a stepping stone, and probably a natural stepping stone, from being the soul in nature to eventually arriving at Purushottama. And it's through, my understanding of this is that it's through kind of stepping back, this silent witness, this unborn self, and then taking one step further, that we look down and see all of this. All of this is a becoming of the being, right? So the being, the self-existent being, is becoming. And that's what is in time and space, and what is in this world, and what we experience here as nature. And so it's the three, it's really the triple path, right? It starts with jnana yoga, knowledge of the true self, the unborn self, capital S, bhakti yoga, moving up to Purushottama, and devotion and love. And who is in relationship to this Purushottama? Who is in love with the Purushottama? It's the soul. It's the individual soul that's in nature. And so coming back to nature and karma yoga, that can be done here, in nature, in time and space. And so to me, this lays out kind of the triple path, and each of them being important. The one thing I wanted to share, because it hit me, and I remember 10 or 12 years ago, this concept really being kind of a game changer in my life, is this word that's being used, seeing it as a becoming in the self-existent being. So the being is becoming. That's what this manifestation is. It is the unfolding or the becoming of that of Purushottama, of the divine being. And so it's not separate from, right? This statement of becoming means, well, we are the divine. We are the divine in the making, in the becoming. And it leads you naturally, for people like me that need to have kind of some mental understanding, it makes it very clear that we are not different than the divine. We are not separate from the divine. We are the divine in its becoming, in his becoming. And why this kind of hit me so hard 10 or 12 years ago is that, we typically here in the West hear that God created the world, right? The word that's being used is typically created, not becoming. And so the minute you think of, at least in my mind, creating, you think of the world manifesting, God manifesting the world outside of himself. He created. It's like an artist who is painting a picture. That artist is creating a picture. That picture is not the artist. It is made out of material that the art is not made out of, and there is no way that one would ever think that that painting is the same as the artist, right? But the minute that we use the word becoming, then the whole thing changes, and now we realize that we are all part of God. We were, or the divine. We were created within the divine. There was nothing but that one, Tat Ekam, at the beginning of time, as the Rig Veda says. And so that one could do nothing but create all of this manifestation within himself. And therefore, we too are divine, right? We are part and parcel. Certainly, we are have some lower attributes and lower natures, which we see here referred to, the lower individual personality. But that's where this evolution comes in, where we are being, where we are evolving to fully divinize the divine here on Earth. And this is a large part, obviously, or the key part of integral yoga. So this is kind of brought back, this word becoming brought back just a lot of, and I don't know, Vladimir, if you even remember, because it was when we were studying the Rig Veda, but when this thought hit me, it just like really kind of shifted everything in the way that I saw things. And it just became, from a mental perspective, so obvious that all this is the divine. And we don't think about the divine creating the world outside of himself or apart from himself or with material that isn't part of him, because there was only him at the very beginning. So we are of his essence. We are individualized sparks, souls, if you will, of his being, with each unique purpose, swabhava, if you will, but of his essential nature. So I just wanted to share that, and if anyone have any thoughts or comments, yeah, please pitch in, and if not, we'll just go to the next one. Nope. Okay. So we'll just and there's only a couple sentences here that's left. So reaching the inner actionlessness of the silent Purusha, so this is the unborn one, Naishkarmaya. Is that right, Vladimir? Naishkarmaya?
Naishkarmya.
Naishkarmya. Well, okay. And leaving Prakriti to do her works, we can attain supremely beyond to the status of the divine mastery, which is able to do all works and yet be bound by none. The idea of the Purushottama, seen here as the incarnate Narayana, Krishna, is therefore the key. Without it, the withdrawal from the lower nature to the Brahmanic condition, which is that condition of the unborn one, leads necessarily to inaction of the liberated man, his indifference to the works of the world. With it, The same withdrawal becomes a step by which the works of the world are taken up in the spirit with the nature and in the freedom of the divine. See the silent Brahman as the goal, and the world with all its activities has to be forsaken. See God, the divine, the Purushottama, as the goal, superior to action, yet its inner spiritual cause and object and original will, and the world with all its activities is conquered and possessed in the divine transcendence of the world. So this is, wow, it's thundering now here. This is pretty much what we were referring to below is before is that oftentimes what would happen in spiritual paths is that there would be the experience of the Brahmanic condition of this unborn one, and it would be so big, so huge, that it would seem that all this here on earth and in nature was nothing, was an illusion, was Maya, right? But here, what we're being encouraged to do is to use that experience, that Brahmanic experience, is only a stepping stone, and from there to experience the Purushottama, right? And then see that all of this, the world with all of its activities, can be conquered, can be transformed, can be divinized. And possessed in a divine transcendence of the world. And I think there's just one more sentence, so I'll do that, and then any comments, or if we want to go on to the next paragraph. We didn't get past the first one. It can become, instead of a prison house, right, the world, an opulent kingdom, Rajam Samridam, which we have conquered for the spiritual life by slaying the limitation of the tyrant ego and overcoming the bondage of our jailer desires and breaking the prison of our individualistic possessions and enjoyment. The liberated, universalized soul becomes Svarat Samrat, self-ruler and emperor. So this comes back to me to the concept of what karma yoga is all about, which is slaying the ego. Here he says the tyrant ego, overcoming our desires, overcoming the attachments to the fruits, attachment to the means, breaking through our the prison of our individualistic possessions and enjoyments. And instead, we have a soul that's liberated from a universal perspective. But I would have to add here, this soul, although universalized, is still individualized, right? The soul is still able to have an individual relationship with Purushottama in terms of bhakti, love, and devotion. And the soul is still individualized in that it has its own, each of our souls has its own purpose in life, our own swabhava leading to our swadharma. So there it's this, instead of the merging of the soul into the Purushottama, or merging with the unborn one, the idea is we keep our individuality, the soul's individuality, which allows us then to enjoy the Purushottama, and it also allows us to divinize nature here. It's through both the transformation of our outer nature, which can be done through the soul coming forward, as well as obviously the connection with the divine and the higher consciousness coming in to help this transformation. So this to me is just a wonderfully power-packed paragraph in this chapter 14, this first one, and that's really why Ruthie and I decided just to take our time and really kind of focus on what this is saying, because it really sets the tone for the rest of the chapter, which is real typical of Sri Aurobindo's writings. That first paragraph and the last paragraph are the two bookends for all the concepts that unfold in between. And so that is it. From there, we had, like I said, we went in early with the exercise, but I will stop sharing, and we can either go on from there, or if people have any. Oh, Ruthie, you're here. I didn't see you originally. Perfect. Glad. And anyone has any comments? And if not, then I think Vladimir, maybe we just go to the next next paragraph, or if you want to go to scripture.
Roddy, I just want to say that that was really excellent how you pulled it all together, because I have felt the same, that that first paragraph really was laying out all of the foundation, and how you brought in the individual, our individuality. That was great.
Well, I think too, it's one of the unique things about Sri Aurobindo and the Mother's Integral Yoga is not only the soul, which other paths certainly acknowledge, but the individualization of the soul. It's not a soul that is one, it is of the same essence as the divine, but it is here with its own purpose and part of that responsibility that all our souls signed up for is to help transform nature, to divinize nature here on earth. So it has individual purpose also. And
I would
Ruth,
ask
sorry.
for Vladimir maybe to just comment briefly, or somebody on whenever we talk about this whole creation or becoming of the Supreme, it's that I was introduced to that word svatantra, this sense of freedom, bound by none. There are no boundaries. There were no building permits. There's no taxes to be paid. I often so think that my freedom depends on some kind of permission. And yet that whole concept of being supremely free in it all fascinates me. I'm continuing that. I always try to add that sense of freedom, because it's so foreign to my ego and to the world we live in so much that
Actually, you defined it beautifully that ego is the imprisonment, basically. If you get rid of this ego, you will be free. You will become Swarat and Samrat. You will become an emperor and self-ruling being, who you are actually. Only that ego makes you small and believe in all other powers of nature which are kind of holding you back. By the way, in this vision of getting rid of ego, Sri Aurobindo defines two different ways of. One is leading away to the spirit to dissolve oneself and disappear in bliss, and in that abyss of bliss, as he says in the canto of adoration of the Divine Mother, that you have plunged into the divine abyss. Yeah? And then the question comes, but where hast thou thrown self's mission and self's power? On what dead bank on the eternal's road you forgot about your self's mission, as if it was not there, as if you had to dissolve your ego and plunge into the glad divine abyss and disappear there forever. It's not the aim. Something thou camest to do from the unknown. We all came to do something here from the unknown. And this is something what Sri Aurobindo brings and offers. So there are two ways of you dissolve your ego and you go into nothingness, into the glad divine abyss. You disappear in it. There is no more individuality. There is no more you. You are just dissolved. Or you dissolve your ego for the sake of finding your true Svarat and Samrat, your true freedom, freedom of Purushottama in you, who will be now ruling the whole nature. And that is a new world, totally different from that dissolution into nothingness. Again, we have this idea of one and zero. Who believes that the world starts with zero? They are usually seeking this dissolution in the glad divine abyss. They would like to stop becoming, and become only one being with no distinction. This is zero people. And there are those who believe that the beginning was the one, and that one is actually the self. By the way, I have this let me show, maybe this would be useful to show. the picture of the Huta's picture of the mother, about which we speak all the time when we speak about Purushottama. Look at this beautiful thing. She lays out all the levels. So here we come to the overmind and supermind. Supermind is this supreme level which connects the transcendental Satchitananda with these lower worlds, yeah, overmind, intuitive mind, illumined mind, higher mind, to the mind and proper, vital, physical, and below. So all the worlds, this and that, transcendental and this world together, and then beyond existence, consciousness, bliss, this highest level, there is unmanifest, asat, and beyond sat and asat, she draws this picture, the supreme, and notice how she draws him as a personality. This is something which is mind-boggling. You know, you will not find this anywhere. Nobody speaks, or Gita speaks about Purushottama, but we really don't understand what he wants to say. We believe that it is again some Purusha. It is the personality which is neither he nor she. Yeah, it is neither it, he, or she. It doesn't have the gender. It doesn't have involvement yet with manifest and unmanifest. It didn't even present to itself its own manifestation, its own being, consciousness and bliss. It does not perceive himself as infinite being, consciousness and bliss yet. Can you imagine that level of Purushottama? So, and he, the one who is beyond all this, determines the appearance of our individuality here. Otherwise, individual would not come into play. Individual would not be possible altogether. Why should it be possible if there is no supreme individuality beyond everything? Or the supreme person, or as Lakshman said, the supreme or the Lord. Yes, Mother always referred to him as the supreme or the Lord. That is this supreme she refers to, not to Satchitananda, not to unmanifest even, not even to the supermind which is connecting the transcendental in this world, but to someone who is there behind all that. And
Vladimir,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead. Sir.
No. And he is seated in the heart of man. Adhyajna. Krishna speaks about himself. He brings one more term, adhyajna, seated within the soul of man. So within our psychic being, there is a kernel or the something representative of that supreme personality in each one of us. We all represent the supreme here because we have that soul, that psychic being. And this is the marvelous thing to know, that we are not really just these kind of drops of some kind of light, impersonal light. No, we are very personalized representatives of the Supreme, which he wanted to become. He wanted to be many. That's how he becomes many.
You know, I would say also just back, Bill, to your comment about freedom and freedom through being released from the ego. What's interesting about Integral Yoga also is it's not just about my freedom, me breaking through the ego and soul coming forward. It's not only about individual freedom, it's about collective freedom. So it goes again a step past many other spiritual paths where it was about oneself and that freedom, and then okay, now I'm free to go. I've realized my freedom. But Integral Yoga and Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, the evolution is really about staying and coming back time and again, which again we've signed up for, until everything is fully free and divinized.
Vladimir, the image that you just showed Huta's drawing, it is unique in two respects. The highest, as she has drawn, the supreme, that's how the mother has visualized the supramental being on earth, being without gender,
Mm.
and the organs functioning out of a force, not the animal functioning that we have today.
Mm.
Okay. The other, I'm not aware of anybody else having given these detailed layers of consciousness from the mind to the supermind, which is unique to them, and the psychic being. The other is at the very bottom. People have talked about nature as mental and vital. It is them that have brought in the physical and the inconscient. Nobody's talked about those two. In terms of the ego, Shrivindo, I think, says somewhere that's the last thing to resolve. That's why Mother talks about the ego in the service of the divine. It's not something that disappears day one through it. So you use it to the service of the divine. In that process, it gets to a stage of being ready to be dissolved completely to the supreme.
Yeah, with ego there is a lot of discussion going on. Of course, as we understand ego as our egoistic self, preservation and concerns and preferences, of course, that all has to go because there is no more egoistic preference. There is only one preference: to be the true, to be the one, to be the blissful, the all knowing, the all omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent being. And there is no more preference for anything less than that. So in that sense, of course, ego disappears in its kind of demand as egoism. But ego as a formation in the nature. And this is something interesting. If we examine this from Sri Aurobindo's writings, we will see that he distinguishes ego and egoism. Ego as a formation in nature is needed for the activities in nature. But it may surrender itself and become a faithful instrument of the divine will and presence, and would enjoy totally to be doing the divine work here on the mental, on the physical, and on the vital plane. There must be some agent of nature which will be doing the work. It's not only that I'm relying on the force from above to do everything for me. Nature will be doing the work. So there will be some ego sense. And that some ego sense has to be totally surrendered to the presence. And it will be, definitely, because it will find the meaning in it. The vital itself would be very happy to surrender and find all the strength in the divine and become a pure channel of the divine force. That's how Sri Aurobindo describes this Upanishadic yoga, that all the faculties become channels of that Brahmanic light to the surface. So they are not looking for self-satisfaction anymore. They are looking only to channelize the truth to the surface and to embody it there. They want to be active participants of this embodiment, yes, but on the ground of the truth, not on their own kind of preference and understanding. And that shift has to take place. And ego, as we understand it, as egoism, disappears, but as the agent of nature, which nature created here, it may be divinized. It may become an immortal being. That ego, which we call ego today, can become, as Mother created the immortal Manomaya Purusha, mental being, as she created immortal vital being already, which is unthinkable for us. If you think of it, it's going far beyond everything we know about it. I don't know anywhere even mentioning that somebody created the immortal vital and mental being. What it means then, when the soul comes, it finds its mental and vital being intact with all the memories and all the capacities, and can take them again for this embodiment. Can you imagine such a thing?
Excuse me.
We don't know anyone.
You also have the individual ego, and you have the national collective ego and the national ego. So one of the things that that's sports stewardship in the refers to in supramental manifestation, what team sports do or army experience does is you would sort of make your individual ego subservient to the group ego, whether it's in sports or in any other group setting.
Yeah.
So it becomes a way of training your ego to be subservient to something bigger than your individual self.
Yeah, and there is the development of the nation soul, which the nation souls about which he speaks in the human cycle and the ideal of human
Yes,
unity.
yes,
There
yes.
we find that there is, before the soul comes, the nation soul comes to the front within the nation. Before it is formed, there will be stages of its development. There will be ego, vital ego jumping in. What happened to Germany, yes, to Hitler's time? It was that ego which took charge and took, a hold of the whole nation in the name of the soul. So this happens, and this will happen again, and we will learn from these mistakes. But finally, we will arrive at something which is much greater. And that is very different from the ego, nation mental dogmas. Religions are representatives of those dogmas nowadays. They are becoming more and more, kind of focused on their own truth against others. That all will slowly dissolve, and we will find the truth which is applicable to all.
Excuse me, Vladimir.
Yes.
What is the difference between this ego sense of nature and psychic being?
It's like ego is like a shadow of the psychic being, if you will. Yeah? It's a shadow thrown into the nature, where nature formed the psychic being by its own means, if you will. It needs an agent outside which will tell us that it is me, that it is Vladimir, that he is in US, that he is of this age, that he has this history. He has to have that memory, he has to have that skill. That all is created by nature with all those resources, with all those incapacities, preferences, weaknesses, everything, all the set of things put together is becoming an instrument of some kind for the nature to act, to allow the inner being, the psychic being, to even have anything to do with this nature, to have a relation to it in some way. So it relates to this ego, it deals with it every day, every moment of my life. There is a constant ongoing interaction between the inner being and the outer. And this is how it is built, for the sake of evolution and for the sake of transformation of this outer being, where ego is the agent which helps and which is the transition from the inner being to the outer, and helps to make that transition more personal, more effective, and sometimes very stubborn and resisting very strongly, but that resistance also calls for greater force from within. So it has its role. The ego, as Sri Aurobindo says, was the helper, and the ego is the bar. The ego becomes the bar when the psychic being needs to come to the front. Then ego starts resisting, it becomes an obstacle. But before that, it is a great helper. It develops the whole personality in nature.
Well, and it allows for individualization. I mean, this was nature's way of
Absolutely.
allowing, I am different than you. I am not you, you are not me, I'm different than the tree. So without this sense of separateness, without this ego, we would not be able to be on this whole journey of divinization.
Absolutely. It's a divine device invented by nature with the sanction of the Supreme, that nature will do this. She said, I will do this for you. He said, okay, it will do for now. So she did it. I'm joking, but that is something like this. Yeah? She needs a sanction from him, and he gives her sanction to do this. So she created the clown. She was cloning us. She created a shadow, a puppet which is representing the being, the inner being. Yeah? It's not the inner being, of course. It's much weaker.
Then, if I understand properly, it's like the psychic being is not allowed to interact with nature and needs the ego sense for that, for this interaction with nature, isn't it?
Not necessarily totally so. Psychic being wants to become a being, yes, again, individualized. How would it become individualized if it would not have a help from nature? Individualized help. It cannot become then. So it needs that ego to form its opinions, its dogmas, its preferences, its fightings, its discoveries in the nature. And then it has some individualized material to choose for itself and to become more and more individualized, and then replace that ego. When psychic comes to the front, ego gives to psychic the whole play. Yeah? It cannot stay anymore. It doesn't stay. It becomes like a servant, a small servant. What would you like me to do? Do you want me to do something for you now? Calculate something maybe on the computer. I can do that job for you. It will offer. Yes, yes, Charles and Teresa, was that hand going up or it was just scratching the head?
I think scratching the head.
I think maybe Kimberly, I don't know if you had something. I've seen your mic off for a bit.
Yeah, I just something to add without having, your language and terminology, just and everything that's been said, but starting with Bill, speaking of freedom, and I can say sometimes I've experienced a little bit of that sense of freedom. And for me, it all had to do with identity. It had to, which maybe is another word for ego in this sense. I don't know, but with your identity, with what we tell ourselves, right? And for whatever reason, if it lifts away or dissolves, that's a real sense of freedom, right? And because I had something, going through something that's like horrible at the time, which the big deal isn't horrible, a loss of a job, when I thought was a really good worker. I'm a good, and I'm just a mom and a worker, and that's all I could do, in my life, be these two things. And then somehow I realized that's not me. Either one is not like the true essence, right? So then after that, I've just worked really hard to really not want to have an identity because it's so much freer to just be able to be in that beingness and try to live your life. So I've never quite understood ego. So maybe that's why I've stayed away from that term. And it seems like every time I'm in a conversation, different people think it means different things. So, but I do know, and it really drives me, that sense of freedom to try to help other people experience that little bit of openness, because to me, that's transformation. So that's all. I just felt compelled to speak about freedom. Thank you.
So lovely.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in here too, because I remember a time when I was in my early 20s for up until then, I wasn't aware that I was making any decisions, really. Life was just going on, and I was just flowing down the river. And I remember the awakening that I had, which was, I have a choice. There are choices in life that we make when we're aware of our situation, when we're aware of different paths we can go through down, instead of just letting kind of nature take us in her along her path or on her course. And to me, that was my little sense of freedom, that, wow, I actually have a choice in life. I can do this, I can do that, I can become aware, I can choose. So freedom to me was choice through awareness. And it just, at that time, it was literally just blew me away. Now it was like, duh. But that was my my experience and take of freedom.
No, freedom, I think that Shemida refers to in his letters with Nirod Baran, freedom been very different for women throughout history than for men. Shemida, paraphrasing, it says women have been enslaved and what their choices in life were dictated by men. It's only in recent times that you see that the women have true freedom of choice. Otherwise, it was dictated by what men made possible for them. They had to stay at home if that was their only role, going back centuries. And in many parts of India, it's still the primary role. Women is rearing children. So in sense of freedom that men can claim to have had, women have not had that till very recently, and still don't have that in most parts of the world.
Yeah.
So the freedom is different for the male gender than the female gender. Has been for a long time.
Yeah. And we are talking about freedom in life here as freedom of choice, yes. But there is another freedom, not to have any choice anymore. Choice of the ego. There is no choice of ego anymore. Any choice of ego is viewed the same way as insufficient or as secondary or less important, as beautifully Kimberly spoke, that she realized that she is not only the mother and not only the worker in the factory, there is something else lurking behind, kind of trying to, and we feel it once in a while. Am I really this Vladimir sitting in this room? Oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, and there's have to so many things. There's piling up things to do. Is it really me who is in charge of all this? Many times I think it is just taking place and you are being used as the body, as the mind and the vital and emotions. You are used, and you let it yourself being used. You attach yourself to that activity and say, okay, I go with it. Okay, I go with it. This is my freedom. To take a choice from something which is already given to me. Right? Yes, right, Kimberly, you want to say something?
Yeah, well, and isn't that kind of tied to not being attached to the outcomes of something? If you are working, for something and you're not tied to that outcome, because it's not even really you. And I also think there's a connection to oneness that you can have in these different elements, like feeling oneness with nature or with other human beings or even yourself, or the cosmos. There's that, the boundaries go away. And
Absolutely. And this is a little bit like a little bit bewildering, because we are not used to live in this freedom. As one great writer from Japan, Akutagawa Ryunosuke, wrote that freedom is unbearable for weak people. It's like the air of the high mountains. It is unbearable for weak people. So it's really, I feel how I am weak to hold on to that freedom. I want it, but when I get it, I'm looking back for some, some anchor. I want to anchor myself here, there, to recognize myself again back to this small being, to the habitual being. Okay, I'm small. Okay, whatever. Yes, I have pain. Yes, I have this. I have issues. I have things to solve, to resolve. Then that's me. That's me. I feel it again back at home, to my small home. And again, when I'm becoming free, oneness everywhere. And as you say, I recognize myself greater than just Vladimir or some father or son or brother or friend, something bigger than that, more than that. And
I
that,
think the identities aren't real. I mean, the identity, like, whether for your sports team or your nation or, nationalistic things.
absolutely. And I'm even wondering, you see, I'm born Ukrainian. I'm listening to Ukrainian news and I'm a little bit like aching for this war going on between Russia and Ukraine and how US will support Ukraine or not. And I'm telling this to Radhe once in a while. And she looks at me every time wondering, what is he talking about? But this is some part of that being which was formed from nature, which I inherited and carry with me for some reason. But it is not me, definitely. And at the same time, it is me because I took it onto myself as a part of my work here, or presence of this consciousness. I just took this cloth onto myself, and now this cloth is part of me somehow. Whatever you say, yes, this world is a part of me in whatever form. And still at the same time, I am neither of these. Neither this cloth, nor this nationality, not even this language. It's not even mine.
Vladimir, what would it exactly look like when the psychic being is fully individualized, utilizing the nature's means and everything compared to the soul that is already surrendered to the divine? Because when a psychic being is fully individualized, it's also supposed to act on the divine will, but how it would be like differentiated from the general soul that's completely identified and surrendered to the divine.
This was the question from Pavitra, what you are asking to the mother. How would I kind of know about it? How it differs from, mother says, don't even try to imagine, because you will not imagine that what it is. It's really beyond our imagination. She says it's like the chicken born from the egg. It could not imagine the world to be that big and that different from that world within the egg. So the suggestion is not to try to hasten this and to imagine it, or to create some kind of formula, or again another dogma, how it is, how it should be. It should happen, and whatever it is, it will be that. And somebody asked her, and how would we know that we got it or not? She said, when you will got it, you would know for sure that it is that. So there's no danger about that. Yeah.
Sorry, could be looks like a joke, and I'm sorry if I disturb you, but I saw some weeks ago a video from YouTube from Elvis Presley, and he was in action, and he has his relationships with the fans, and in some way I catch how could be the psychic being flourishing in a human being. I'm sorry if I disturb you with this kind of,
Super
explanation.
beautiful thought, and totally would subscribe to it. And not only Elvis Presley, there are other great individuals who bring that light, that inner light forward, which changes the whole humanity, the whole perspective, the whole dogma, the whole sense of beauty. Beatles, look at these Beatles.
Right, right.
People who finally found India as their home. Look at their verses, their songs, "Let It Be," or
Imagine.
imagine all the people. Just it's like a mantra, you see. It's an inner light. So the divine is using these means, these more open beings, for bringing more and more light to the surface for others. And the time has come, so they were used. Churchill was used by Sri Aurobindo
Yeah.
to fight the war with Hitler, with his ways. He found his ways, to deal with the very powerful resistance in the world, and so on. So this is happening. Yes, definitely.
The Beatles were in Rishikesh in 1968,
Yeah.
learning meditation techniques, and the song "Imagine" was recorded in 1971 after their visit. And I think they triggered the whole transcendental meditation in the U.S. and
Absolutely.
around the world.
Absolutely. And Harrison, Jai Guru Deva Om.
Yes, yes, yeah.
What a song. It is a profound song, mantra song. And how many generations were singing this song? Hippies, everybody got that vibration. Maybe they never followed it, but it settled down and changed the whole perception of the world.
Worldwide. Even to this day, those song "Imagine" is still, still it was the used in the Olympics, the opening ceremony. The Beatles, John Lennon song "Imagine."
Right. It's an amazing journey if we look at it from this perspective of the development of the soul qualities coming to the front, changing our perception of ourselves and the world. It becomes a very attractive proposition, or attractive adventure for us, for the souls to be involved, not just a tiring, everyday routine we have to do. Yeah. Ruthie, you want to say something? I can see that.
I'm glad you asked her. I was about to say, Ruthie, now that you're here, did you take another poem or something to your yoga class?
No, well, no. This evening I've just been jotting down words that that are coming up over and over again in different conversation, and what they mean to me, like identity and ego and freedom, individualization, inner light, open being, soul qualities coming to the front. So all of these things, I'm thinking about them and what are they in me. One thing that Kimberly said that I kind of tuned in on, I retired a few years ago, and so my ego, my identity was tied to that job, to that work, and it was really difficult to let it go. I had no idea what would fill in, what's the backfill on that. But at the same time, one of the things that you said, Radhe, about freedom was, in a way, what you were seeing as freedom is being able to make these decisions and not just floating through life. Maybe it's the other way around. So it's all of these things are like flying through my mind. Just how does that all come together? Identity, ego, freedom, individualization, and so on. So anyway, no poem, I'm sorry to say.
That's okay. Your poem last time will last us quite a while. It was very nice.
Nice, nice, beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts. And
You're mute.
there are two reasons why this creation was created. You know? To express freedom and bliss, delight. Everyone has two rights, constantly inbuilt rights, intrinsic rights for freedom and delight of existence. They are going together. For this purpose, the manifestation was created. Great. So shall we stop here today, Radhe? Or you want to?
Yeah, well, no, I was just going to say, well, now we have paragraph 2 in chapter 14 and onwards if we have any volunteers. And we said we'd kind of do it collaborative with someone else. And
You can take next part of your presentation next time, and we continue in the same.
no, mine is done. So now we're asking if there's 2 other individuals that would like to come forward and
Please come forward.
We have,
come forward.
Teresa and I have an idea.
Yeah.
And so we would like to ask Siegfried if he would like to dance with us at some time, because we share a neuroscience background and I think some other similar values that have been expressed. And so I'm asking in public, Siegfried, would you like to work with Teresa and I in collaboration, whether it's the next time or sometime in the future? It really doesn't matter to me what the subject matter is. And it's more about your timing and your life condition and your schedule. And given that we're like 12 hours away, timeline, or 8 hours away, that presents its own unique opportunities. But that's something that we would like to do. And just because of our schedule with Teresa and I, instead of it being 2 collaborations, then what would work best if we could do it in 3. Siegfried, what are your thoughts?
It's a pleasure to receive any invitation, but I think we have to have an appointment, and then you can clarify a little bit more, because my English is not so is not enough to understand deeply what you are offering. But we can have a chat when you want, and we can discuss about that. I'm open of everything. Thank you.
Not your English that we're attracted to, it's your heart.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So Radhe, we will communicate, the 3 of us, and look at something in the future if that would be appropriate.
Absolutely. Anybody else for next time, or do we want to do it collectively? Take the next couple paragraphs.
What exactly do we have to do? Do we have to just read from the presentation and?
You do whatever you would like. The idea was to try to get more involvement and engagement from everybody. So we thought, well, one way to do that is that we can get 2 people working together. They get to know each other a little bit better. They both, in this case, we're reading chapter 14, can take the next paragraph. They can take the chapter and just share with us your thoughts as you were reading, your understanding, how it might apply in your life, and just to start to start some conversation with the group around it. And it was really Charles' idea that we do it with one other person so that we get to know each other a little bit better, and we also collaborate and get different ideas. So it's a completely up to you, Nishat. We just decided to take one paragraph. We started with introducing each other. Ruthie came up with an exercise to ask people, how it applies in their lives. So you can get creative and have fun and just do whatever you'd like to do.
Okay.
Was that a volunteer? Nishat, I'm sure you would do great. We just need a teammate for Nishat. Anybody else that would like to volunteer, Kimberly? I saw you. I saw you.
I don't feel like I know it. I really
You don't have to know it. You look at me. I didn't know. We just all come together and give our thoughts and opinion. But we just need somebody to kind of to lead off and give some ideas and interpretations. And we've always got Vladimir, the guru, behind. So if we get lost along the way, we reels us back in.
And then, yes, I'm happy to work with someone on the next paragraph. But I also want to say, Siegfried and I were at a symposium this weekend online, and there's just so many places that this work, the stuff we're talking about here, is just it's intersecting in so many different big places. And when you talk about illuminated people, someone was telling his story about how the street, I even does essays on the Gita, fell off a top shelf of some place he was in San Francisco, totally changed his life. And he's worked with the UN, and he's head of this big thing. And then it was one story after another like that related to the Gita, and just intersecting all different groups. So that was nice. So am I working with someone?
Nishat,
Yeah,
you want to share your video
volunteer.
for a second
Sure.
in case she.
Well, I have a really.
Oh, now you muted yourself.
I was saying I have a really bad
there you are.
haircut.
A bad haircut? It's a great haircut.
But yeah, I can volunteer. Yeah, but I haven't read the essays essays on the Gita in like maybe 6 years now, so I might have to brush up on it.
Yeah, just take chapter 14. There, what is it? The Divine Worker. What's the title of it, Vladimir?
Yeah, I can look it up.
So they're topical, right? And it's really relating still to chapter 3 and 4 of the Gita, the Divine Worker. Whoops, is that? So yeah, just do your
chapter 14.
best. Chapter 14.
So that's the principle of divine works.
Divine works, yeah. And Ruthie and I just did the first paragraph. So you could even just take the first sentence, or you can read the chapter and pick out one or two ideas and thoughts that you both would like to discuss and share.
Sure, okay.
I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, great, Kimberly.
Nishat's been working with us on our internet strategy. He's been part of a team for the last 4 or 5 months. So you'll enjoy working with him, Kimberly.
Great.
It's awesome.
Thank you to the volunteers. Hooray.
Your time is coming, Bill.
Are you from Case Western?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Department. I don't do any physics either, but I help the chairs.
Oh, great. Okay. I know people who went there to Case Western Business School.
Yeah, great.
Okay, we're set. You want to close with mantra, Vladimir?
Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.